Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Read Aloud for the day. We left off with the family having gone to Alabama, and they were right on Grandma Sands' doorstep. And the last line that I read was that they were finally going to see what Grandma Sands really looked like. So, continuing from there. We all bunched up together by Mama's door, but she didn't get out. She was still holding the horn like a nut. We had to cover our ears. Dad said, "Nothing's changed." The door of a regular little old house opened. Me and Joey had never seen Grandma Sands in our lives. Byron said he could remember that she was the meanest, ugliest person in the world, but he was probably lying. He was only 4 the last time Mama and Dad were here. Byron said he had nightmares for a couple of weeks after they left Alabama 10 years ago. All the weird Watsons had real good imaginations, but none of us was ready for what came out of the door of that house. I was expecting a troll. I thought Grandma Sands would be bigger than Dad. I thought she'd be foaming at the mouth, like she had rabies. I remember a couple of years ago how Mama had cried and cried when someone called from Alabama and told us that Grandma Sands had had a little stroke. So I knew she walked with a cane now. I'd imagined the cane would be as big as a tree trunk with crows and owls and lizards living in it. What came out was a teeny weeny old woman that looked just like Mama would if someone shrunk her down about 5 sizes and sucked all the juice out of her. Grandma Sands waved a little skinny stick in the air and said, "What are y'all doing here today? You ain't supposed to be here till Monday. Man, if you think Mama can talk Southern style, you should hear Grandma Sands." Mama was blubbering and smiling and covering her mouth with both hands and ran right up on the porch and nearly broke that little old woman in half. "How you doing, Mama?" she cried on the woman's shoulders, and then she held Grandma Sands out to look at her. "You look so good." Boy, Mama can lie when she wants to. "Y'all come on over here and give your granny a hug," my Southern style mother said. Me and Joey and Byron shuffled over in a little crowd, and when we got through pushing each other forward, I was at the front and had to go on the porch to hug Grandma Sands first. I tried to be real careful with her. She was just a little taller than me and skinnier than anything I'd ever seen alive. I could see her brown scalp right through her curly silver hair. Grandma Sands squeezed me hard and cried all over me. She wiped a bunch of tears away with a twisted up hand and blinked a couple of times before she looked at me. She was so short she didn't even have to look down. She tried to say something, but she couldn't talk. She just stuck out her bottom lip and nodded her head up and down a couple of times. Then she pulled me back to her and squeezed me like crazy. Mama slapped the back of my head and said, "Kenneth Bernard Watson, you best quit acting so silly and give your grandmother a good hug." I squeezed her a little. A smell like baby powder came out of her when I did. I really think I could feel her lungs when I touched her back. I don't know what got Joey started, but she was off to the races with her tears. She was the only one who'd practiced what she'd say to Grandma Sands. She sniffed a couple of times, then said, "Hi, Grandma Sands. It's a real pleasure to meet you." You could only understand half of what she was saying. She was blubbering so much. Grandma Sands matched Joey tear for tear. They squeezed each other for a while, then Grandma Sands got her little squeaky voice back and said to Mama, "Lord Lona, if this child ain't you! Look at this baby, just as pretty and sweet as you." Mama and Joey grinned like 2 nuts. Byron was next. This was what I'd dreamed about. These were the 2 meanest, most evil people I'd ever known, and I knew only one of them was going to come out of this alive. There was going to be a battle, something like if Godzilla met King Kong, or Frankenstein met Dracula, or like when champion wrestler Bobo Brazil meets the Sheik. I'd imagined that a week or 2 after we got back to Flint, we'd get a phone call from Alabama with the winner of the big battle on the other end. If it was Byron, he'd talk kind of cool and low out of the corner of his mouth and say, "Shoot, man, you better come get this old chick. I ate her alive." Grandma Sands won the battle. We'd have to hold the phone away from our ear while she shouted, "Lona, you call this a bad child? This little saint is ready to come back north and go to Sunday school and scrub all y'all's floors. But as soon as I saw Grandma Sands, I knew that Byron would destroy this poor old woman. I was even afraid Mama might decide not to leave him in Alabama. Byron walked up on the porch real cool and kind of bent over to give Grandma Sands a hug. Grandma Sands squeezed him hard. Lona, what you teach these babies up north? Don't they know how to give no one a proper hug? She held Byron by the arms and looked at him from top to bottom. You grew up to be a fine-looking boy. You was so puny when you was born you nearly worried us crazy. Got strong, too. She slapped Byron's arm and he kind of laughed. Grandma Sands reached up and ran a wrinkly old hand over Byron's head. A little short on hair, but we're going to get on just fine. What you think, Bi? Yes, ma'am. Good, good. See, there's lots of things you can do down here. Mr. Robert ain't as much help as he used to be. So all them things he used to do, you can do now. Mama said, Who? Mr. Who? Dad came up on the porch and got a ton of hugs and tears too. Then Grandma Sands pulled everybody together. Her little arms could only get around one person at a time, but as the weird Watson stood there with some of us laughing, some of us crying, and some of us looking cool, it felt like we were all wrapped up in a big ball. Grandma Sands kept saying, My family, my beautiful, beautiful family. Except with that southern-style accent and all the weeping, it sounded like she was saying, Fambly. Finally, the crowd started breaking up, and Grandma Sands said, Now what am I going to feed y'all? I wasn't expecting you till Monday. Me and Mr. Robert usually just has leftovers on Sunday, but I guess if I'll go down to Job's and pick up some things, we can have chicken tonight. You good at following directions, Byron? Huh? Byron's face twisted up. What? Grandma Sands' voice popped like one of those big brown grocery bags being snapped open. Vi looked surprised and said, I'm at... Huh, ma'am? You good at following directions? Job's is a good little walk. I said, he can follow directions real good, Grandma Sands. He's not as dumb as he looks. I shut up real quick and wished I hadn't said anything when Grandma Sands looked at me and said, Lona, maybe there's two who should be spending the summer down here with their granny. Everybody started going inside the ugly little house. Mama sounded worried. Mama, who is this Mr. Robert? Grandma Sands laughed just like the Wicked Witch of the West and said, Honey, we got to talk. You just be patient, and as soon as he gets up, I want y'all to meet him. As soon as he gets up? Oh, Mama. Mama sounded real upset and disappointed and southern, but not as disappointed as me. The way Byron kept his head down and was smiling and saying, Yes, ma'am, this, and no, ma'am, that. It looked like he had surrendered before the first punch was thrown. Instead of King Kong and Godzilla, it was like King Kong and Bambi. Instead of Bobo Brazil and the Sheik, it was like Bobo Brazil and Captain Kangaroo. Instead of Dracula and Frankenstein, it was like Dracula and a giraffe. And Byron was all neck. He knew exactly what I was thinking. After Grandma Sands gave us directions, Byron looked at me sideways and said, What are you staring at? I just shook my head. What'd you expect? I asked. You seen her? That bird's as old as dirt. She's so old I bet she used to step over dinosaur turds. I ain't gonna have her death on my hands. I knew that was a lie. It seemed like all the fight was out of Byron and we'd only been in Birmingham for a couple of minutes. And that, my friends, is the end of chapter 11. We're going to go ahead and stop there for today. We're going to pick up tomorrow with chapter 12. That dog won't hunt no more. I hope you guys are enjoying the story. Have yourselves a wonderful day. Remember to complete your exit ticket, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.